Hi everybody, my name is PCR Suresh and I'm a director from Esigo Consulting Group Private Limited. I'm a part of the Cybersecurity Committee for the DLC Chennai chapter. I am so glad to talk to you on cybersecurity today. And the topic that has been given to me is cybersecurity threats and the way forward in 2022 and 23. Now, before I go into the actual subject, I just want to give you a context on what is happening around us. The year 2020 has been an eventful year. 2021 was even more eventful. And the first quarter of 2022 saw just another major incident happening in the world, the invasion of Ukraine by the Russians. Now let me come back home. The 2020 pandemic actually changed the way we work in our nation. More than 80% of the workforce started working from remote locations. And 20% of them were never going to come back to office or never going to come back to even work in some cases. And so what does this mean? I'm going to just give you a few threats, top threats. I'm going to connect to the trends that are happening in the cybersecurity world and how the cybersecurity landscape is changing and how we can respond and how we can learn lessons from it and make sure that our information asserts, not just organizational, but also our personal asserts and our family information asserts are protected. So this change in the work culture and added together the cloud infrastructure adoption by many companies and the physical cybersecurity systems and highly connected supply chains have really expanded the surface of the attack for cyber criminals. This is a real challenge. This is opening up to new challenges and new risks for the cybersecurity defense community. That's the first major trend that is happening across the nation and, in fact, across the globe. The second trend that I want to highlight to you today is identity systems and systems access controls and even password managers are being used by most organizations today. And all of these are coming under constant attack or sustained attack. The reason is, it is much easier for me to probably look at an individual's credential at a single system or an isolated system. But if I were to actually penetrate into a system like this, an identity system or a password manager or any access control systems, then I would be able to get a whole lot of credentials across the organization or across a particular group. And that makes it easier for me to penetrate into targeted asserts and perform my goals of inserting malware or malicious codes. Okay, the third most important trend that I want to highlight today is the digitization process that every organization is jumping into. Yes, it is imperative for organizations to stay ahead. Software supply chains are plenty or interacting with them and working with them. And all these organizations, these software supply chain organizations, have seen increased cyber attacks. We see that data and we see that about there is a significant increase in the cyber attacks on these software change digitization partners that organizations are engaging. And it is estimated by the year 2025, at least 50% of all these organizations are going to experience some form of a cyber attack or other. Okay, the fourth trend that I want to highlight is vendor consolidation. Security products are converging and they're being bundled up into single platforms. What happens is earlier there were multiple security products used from multiple vendors, but now organizations are realizing that consolidating them into one platform has a lot of benefits. While it is good in terms of cost efficiencies and negotiating better prices, it is also a challenge in terms of a single point failure. If there is a single point of failure, then the entire failure reflects across all the entire organization. So that's another point or a trend that I thought I should highlight. The next one is what is called a cyber security mesh. Now, this is a new development in the cyber security architecture. I will put it very shortly and briefly. Organizations are developing security controls and rolling out to distributed asserts across the organization, be it their in-campus or premises where they need to roll it out, or be it in their data centers, or be it in their cloud applications. They have rolled out these security controls across distributed information assets. And this is a good thing to happen And that makes it a little difficult for intruders or hackers to work on isolated networks or penetrate into isolated networks. Okay, the next two trends that I want to quickly touch upon before I go to the top security risks is distributed decisions. What do I mean by that? Organizations today need a fast and agile cybersecurity function to support their digital business priorities. The CISO is a centralized function, and as digitization processes expand, the role of the CISO also gets burdened. And so it is essential for the CISO to decentralize some of the decision making to the decentralized teams so that they can make better cyber judgments and better responses to cyber threats that happen in the distributed network of the organization. And the last trend that I wanted to highlight, now I know lots of organizations spend a lot of money on training, but the training that we are doing currently is not good enough. The reason I say that is e-learning or self-certification or merely compliance-based training to just put that tick in that box is not going to be enough. Companies are going to be forced to invest in training so that they create a holistic approach to training, a holistic approach to behavior, and a holistic approach to change in the culture to respond to the way they work to prevent cybersecurity risks in the organization. Okay, now I want you to understand the top risks that the industry faces. Now, I'm not going to cover all the risks, but the top 5, which almost contributes to 90% of the losses or the risks that you may see. And on top of the list is ransomware. Now, this is something that you have probably heard. All of you have heard about it. But ransomware itself is becoming more and more sophisticated. It's no longer somebody in an organization saying, okay, as long as you have a backup data, I am fine. If my one-day data is lost, then I don't pay any ransom, but I recover my data and I can carry on business. That's not going to happen anymore because the attackers are equally sophisticated. The very tools that are used to prevent systems and networks, like beacons, for example, are used by the threat actors to penetrate and execute these malwares. Role of malware is no longer remotely, accessing a system, but they are, creating an ecosystem where they're able to penetrate into a network or system, what is called as CDNs, criminal, networks are created. And like we have SaaS, software as a service, today we have ransomware as a service. Can you believe that? RAAS is what they call it. So these guys who create the ransomware are actually servicing these softwares to specialists who can actually penetrate and execute on target systems. Yeah, before I jump into the second top risk, I just want to give you a little bit of a background on ransomware. The total amount of ransom that was demanded was more than $2 billion US dollars in the year 2021. And average cost of recovery for an organization was about 1.5 million. That's huge. And that's really a pain for organizations across the globe. The second point is social engineering. All of you have probably heard a lot about social engineering. To simply put it, 35% of the breaches in 2021 incorporated social engineering techniques, which includes phishing, quid pro quo, or scare mails, and so on and so forth. And this is not just for smaller organizations or medium-sized organizations. Do you know Twitter last year lost about $100,000 US dollars because of a successful phishing attempt by somebody? So much said is good enough on social engineering. Let me move on to the next risk. Okay, the third top risk that I would like to highlight is cloud computing vulnerabilities. Now, cloud computing is a $250 billion industry, and it is growing at the rate of 40% per annum. Do you know there were more than 10 million attacks, external attacks on cloud accounts in 2021 alone? Cyber criminals can actually scan cloud servers which has no passwords or exploit patches in the systems and execute brute force attacks. And that's why cloud vulnerabilities are more serious than anything else that you can imagine. The fourth risk that I would like to bring to your attention is third-party software. If you look at the top 30 e-commerce service providers, they've engaged more than 1,200, software providers or, suppliers or vendors, as you may call it. And out of these 1,000, nearly 300 plus of them were found to have at least one critical vulnerability, and that's good enough. One compromise can, impact the entire ecosystem. The fifth risk that I want to quickly highlight to you before I go into cybersecurity lessons for 2022 and 23 is what they call DDoS, or distributed denial of service. This simply means that hackers deny your service to your customers. And do you know the cost of denial of service for 1 hour is millions of dollars? And that itself can cripple organizations if they don't invest sufficiently to prevent such DDoS attacks. Now let me go back to the last section of my talk to you today, which is cybersecurity lessons for 2022-23. Now I want to keep it simple. Now the most scarce resource that we see in the IT world today is common sense. You might probably get furious with me for saying that, but I don't want to complicate lessons by talking into technicalities, but simple things that if you can do. There are 4 things that I want to highlight today to you that will actually keep you safe, your organization safe from cyber attacks. The first is device security. Whatever device you're using, be it your mobile phone, your laptop, or your standalone system in your organization, you just have to make sure that that system is secure. As simple as that. How do you do that? Encrypt your files. Make sure that you have a good software that is recommended by the organization. Do not download unnecessary links on your system. Make sure that you follow the security protocol that is given by your organization. And even at home, if you're using your personal computer, make sure that you have a good software installed, a good antivirus software installed, and you keep updating all the versions of the hardware that comes into your laptop. And that's the first thing you need to take care of. And the second one is network security. This is more from organizational point of view. Are we making sure that the firewall's performance are being evaluated on a regular basis, at least on a quarterly basis? Are we actually making sure that passwords are updated on a quarterly basis? Are we making sure that endpoint detections are working the way it is intended to work? Updating passwords, making sure that the unwanted files are removed and encrypted. These are things that you need to make sure. The third one is just being aware of the threat and the actors and the threat actors that are causing havoc on the system. And this needs continuous learning. You need to have an open mind. You need to spend that extra time to read into literature, to read and know what is happening in the industry. And the last one is the value of data and its safekeeping. Data is money. As much as oil was money a couple of years ago, today data is money. And if I were to tell you that your date of birth can cost you something like $1,000, how much care would you give for that? If you're going to take care of your bank accounts, because you have a balance of say, a couple of lakhs, this data of yours is more valuable than your bank balance of 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs or 10 lakhs. So you have to value your data. You have to make sure whatever you are, making accessible to public. For example, you might be putting a lot of information on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Make sure you think twice before you put any data, and make sure that all your data are safe and encrypted and not easily accessible to anybody else. These are simple lessons that we need to carry. It's just going back to basics and making sure that we have a good password, we have a good software in the system, we make sure that we don't do stupid things like clicking links which are unknown, but you don't get lured to some of these social engineering techniques that saying that I will give you $1 million, you have won $1 million from here, and so on and so forth. So these are just common sense things. If we spend little bit of effort, little bit of attention if we give, then I think our world, our cyberspace will be safe. Thank you so much for this opportunity that you gave me to talk to you on cybersecurity. I know I rushed it. I know I touched the surface, but hopefully DLC Chennai chapter will give us another opportunity to talk to you a little more in detail on various segments that I spoke to you today. Thank you very much.